Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome back to Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
We are wrapping up the year 1980, so we've got Cheryl's husband, Mike, joining us as well. Welcome, Mike.
I'm Mike.
Cheryl and Mike co-own the Silver Platters record store chain in the Puget Sound area. So 1980 wraps up here, which means Mike is going to be giving up his favorite song and album of the year. Cheryl will provide her final song for our playlist from 1980, and I will give you mine. That'll give us 16 songs from 1980. Now, we started back in the summer with this year, didn't we?
Like a year ago.
It's Coming Up by Paul McCartney, Funky Town Lip Sync. Cheryl, again, great choice with Donnie Iris's Aaliyah. Fun learning more about Donnie Iris and listening to that album. We did our metal show, Cheryl and I, back in the summer with Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train. AC/DC, You Shook Me All Night Long. Not metal, but it was part of our show. REO Speedwagon, of course, huge year for them. In fact, an album that straddled 80 and 81, and there will be more REO to come from the High Infidelity album once we get to 1981.
Yeah, we have a couple of those I think they're going to carry over into 81
right.
that were singles in 81.
At least two albums. I know exactly what you're talking about. So Keep on Loving You is on our list. Magic from the wonderful Xanadu soundtrack, Olivia Newton-John. The album to which you're referring, Double Fantasy, which came out at the tail end of 1980. We've got Just Like Starting Over, which was the lead single. Pretty sure more to come from that album from Cheryl in our 1981 series. Biggest Part of Me by Ambrosia. Again, fun part of this project for us is just discovering things about these songs. Maybe we haven't even thought about these bands or songs in years, and then discovering that Ambrosia isn't just a yacht rock band. They're a prog band who happened to release a few amazing yacht rock singles back in the late 70s and early 80s. Staying in the yacht rock vein, Cheryl selected Steal Away by Robbie Dupree. 1980, big year for crossover country. We've got Willie Nelson's On the Road again on the playlist. Also a big year for the ska revival. Cheryl selected English Beats, Mirror in the Bathroom. And now we will add our final three tracks. I'm going to start this off because I'm not going to spend too much time on this because, you know, Frank Sinatra deserves about 3-hour documentary if you want to talk about his life and career. But his final hit came out in 1980. And another thing I enjoy about doing this show and, you know, studying and, reading about, researching these songs and these artists is maybe shattering some misconceptions that people have. I think when most people hear that song, who aren't music heads like the three of us, when you hear Frank Sinatra doing Theme from New York, New York, you think, it's just part of his long, great career. It came out probably sometime during his glory years. When in fact, he was 64 years old and pretty much washed up at this point as a hit-making artist, at least as far as the singles chart is concerned. He hadn't had a hit record since the 60s. Theme from New York, New York, hardly from his glory years, coming out in 1980. And the song was newish, not brand new, but newish. It was composed for a movie musical that came out in 1977 starring Liza Minnelli and Robert De Niro. The song was composed specifically for Liza Minnelli to sing in that movie. So it was a fairly new song. And the album that Frank put out in 1980 is fascinating because, Frank, he had his last hits with the duet with his daughter Nancy on Something Stupid, which actually was a number one for him back in 67. His last big hit was My Way at the tail end of the 60s. And then he had he retired, so he didn't do anything for a couple of years and had his big comeback in 73, but really hadn't recorded much of consequence. In fact, the last shot he had at a hit single, and I don't know who convinced him to do it, but he did a disco song in 1970.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yes.
See, everybody did a disco song. If they had a long enough career, they did a disco song.
Yeah, that didn't work out so hot. So he's actually begun recording sessions in 1979 for his next LP when his producer has this brainstorm, this idea that he wanted to float by Frank. And he says, here's my idea. You do an album in 3 parts. One, it represents your past, so some of the great songs from the American Songbook. Part 2 would be contemporary, you cover songs by contemporary songwriters, the present. And then number 3 is the future. And Frank was just blown away by this idea to the extent that he just called a complete stop on his recording session, said, nope, we're done. I'm not recording a single note until I do this thing. Sonny Burke was his producer. So he puts out this album called Past, Present, Future, Trilogy, Past, Present, Future. Comes out in 1980, recorded in 79. So, like I said, the first disc, The Past, older songs, some of which he'd recorded previously. His arranger on this, Billy May, a guy he'd worked with in the past on a lot of his significant songs in the late 40s, early 50s. Disc 2, The Present. Well, I don't know how present it is because a lot of
debatable.
These, yes. So this is 1980. A lot of these songs, I mean, some of them go back to the 60s, so not exactly contemporary. What'd you say,
Pretty
Sheryl?
much all of them except one maybe are at least 10 years old or older.
Yeah, you said Just the Way You Are, probably. Well, that.
Yeah,
and
Billy Joel's Just the Way You Are is the only one that was actually, although New York would have been
77.
even more present than that.
Right,
but other than that, yeah, all the other songs are from the 60s, most of them. But, maybe to Frank at that age, that did feel like the present because, what's 10, 20 years when you're already in your 60s?
By far, for me, the most fascinating part of that album is the third record, the Future, yes. Which is you got to listen to it for yourself. Right? It's not like Frank is doing cutting edge electro and rap and synth music
that a lot of people in 1980 were doing.
Right,
that did sound futuristic.
It's a different arranger on each disc. Billy May on the Past, Don Costa on the Present, and then the arranger on the Future disc is Gordon Jenkins, again, who had worked on some classic Frank albums in the 50s and 60s. So the arrangements are still typical of that era of music and of Frank's oeuvre, but the lyrics are bonkers.
Yes.
It's nuts. But it's a fascinating listen, and I find it interesting enough to be enjoyable.
The highlight is World War None.
The highlight for me is the satellite visiting all the planets.
Oh, yes.
And if you got a mind like mine, you're sitting there on pins and needles till he gets to Uranus. Like, oh my God, what are they going to? What is he going to say about that? What
they
rhymes?
Hadn't changed the name yet to Uranus back then.
Well, no, that's how he said it, and it almost makes it worse that he pronounces it Uranus.
Oh.
and the lyric for Uranus or Uranus, however you want to say, it's bad either way. The lyric for that is he makes it sound like God. It's just the greatest planet ever. It's like the highlight of the planetary tour is Uranus.
Well, everybody knows Uranus is the best.
Well, Pluto is the one you best want to avoid. Just nutty lyrics and he got pilloried for this. And but there is a small cult out there that loves this disc, and I kind of find myself in the camp that kind of gets a kick out of it.
It is quite fascinating, really, and the fact that it's a triple album. I mean, that's a lot of music. And just like the way you said it came about, and it's like, yes, like this is a go for sure. We're doing this, and it's a triple album. No thought that this was going to maybe be too much or...
You want to talk about too much to record this thing? They didn't do it in a studio. They had to rent a theater so they could get this massive orchestra and choir in there. So he's recording everything live off the floor, basically in this theater. I mean, they do multiple takes, but if you know anything about Frank, you're not going to do a lot of takes. 1, 2, 3, bingo, bango, bongo. We're moving on. Okay. So, but he's surrounding himself with high-class musicians and technical people, so they get it done. There's highlights throughout this 3-disc set, but clearly Theme from New York, New York just really stands out on disc 2. To me, this is a fascinating phenomenon, how this song in 1980 becomes a popular hit, a top 40 hit on Billboard for a 64-year-old relic of the big band era, and makes zero concessions to modern production. I mean, it could have easily been recorded in 1950.
So there's a segment on Colbert where he interviewed, it's Sondheim, right?
This was Kander and Ebb. So, John Kander, Fred Ebb, who 2 famous musicals, Cabaret and Chicago.
So then it was maybe I think Candor was on with Sondheim.
Yeah, you know what? I saw that
on Colbert.
He's in his 90s.
Yes. And they talk about that song. And if I remember correctly, they did talk about the popularity of it. You know, they talked about writing it and that they kept on changing it. But I think
there's a story there. Robert De Niro rejected he said,
yes.
Yeah, Robert De Niro said, "No, this doesn't work. It's too weak." In his words, too weak. There's nothing weak about what got released, and that's part of its appeal. It's a perfect vehicle for Frank.
But what was going on with New York and what New York meant to the U.S. and the troubles that the U.S. was going through and the troubles that New York was going through in 1980, I think helped make it
boost the popularity.
It just resonated with not just New York, but the country.
Help make it there and make it everywhere? Is that what you're saying?
Because there's the power outages, the Son of Sam.
Well, just the general decline of a lot of the inner city neighborhoods. And, you know, you go to Manhattan now, and it's like Disneyland. But back then, there were a lot of parts. There were a lot of parts of Manhattan you would not be caught dead in, or actually you would. Or you may be caught dead
there. Yeah. It is fascinating to me that this is not originally just a Frank Sinatra recording because it's so iconic for him.
Yeah. And if you're younger than we are and you don't remember hearing the song on the radio, and I remember hearing it a lot on the radio. Of course, you know, my dad's radio station was a middle of the road format, so they would have played the heck out of it. It was a top 10 adult contemporary hit, number 32 on the pop charts, which doesn't sound that impressive. But for that guy, for that type of singer, for somebody from
that year,
there is no. What other example is there other than maybe Louis Armstrong with "Hello, Dolly," and then "What a Wonderful World."
What a Wonderful World.
That actually flopped when they originally released it. It was only after the Good Morning Vietnam movie came out that got revived.
Yeah, and that happened a lot in the 80s too, where there were soundtracks with older songs like The Big Chill, or where these songs kind of made their way back into the charts again. But they were old songs. They weren't new recordings by an older artist.
Try as I might, I couldn't dig up any dirt or detail. I went on my favorite music forum to try and see if any experts could chime in on this, but there had to be something very interesting going on behind the scenes in order for this record to perform as well as it did. And how in the world did Reprise, Warner Brothers, how did they convince all these radio programmers? I mean, top 40 radio stations were spinning this complete anachronism, throwback to the 50s, and not 50s rock and roll. This is pre-rock and roll. I mean, what other example is that in contemporary music in the last 30, 40 years? I can't think of anything.
I'm going to make a guess at this. One thing that is known for sure is that music and the distribution of music was all done by the mafia. I'm serious.
Well, yeah, I mean that's kind of what I'm getting
mafia,
at here.
Yeah, the mafia played a big part, and Frank pretty much is linked with, he wasn't, I don't think, in the mafia.
Oh no, there's no question. He had a lot of friends who were in the mob.
Yes,
yeah,
and I'm guessing some palms were greased and some force put on people to make Frank happen.
But the song is deserving of the attention. It's that good.
Oh yes. Yeah.
I mean, it is up there with the great songs in his canon, and he is arguably the greatest male singer of the 20th century in popular music. So I mean, it's got that going for it. But my point is, that's not enough. I mean, that kind of song shouldn't be a hit in 1980. There's no way that song should be a hit in 1980. As good as it is, it's still completely out of its time. But I think there's a documentary movie to be made about just that song and that phenomenon and what it has become. This iconic song, maybe the iconic song about New York.
Played at all the Yankees games.
Right. That's a funny one. That's a funny one too. So the Yankees, I can't remember what year they started using it, but for a while, when the Yankees won, they would play Frank Sinatra's New York, New York. When they lost, they'd play the Liza Minnelli version of New York.
Yeah.
Until Liza's people complained about it. Nothing against Liza, but yeah. So I mean, that's just it's fascinating to me to no end. But Sheryl and I have talked about this in previous episodes. It's been hard picking songs for this year because there's a lot of good songs, but none of them that are just jumping out saying, pick me, I'm better than the rest. So getting down to my final song choice, I had this long list of potential songs. So we were coming back from Christmas up in Tacoma with the in-laws, and I was just reviewing all these songs out of my list, and this just stood out by a mile. I mean, it just did. It had to be there. And again,
it's a great song.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
No matter what decade, no matter what era it came out, it's a great song. And it's a great performance.
We don't have a lot of hard and fast rules about how we're constructing our playlist, only a handful, really. But one thing Sheryl and I talked about, we're going to lean towards songs that transcend. Now, we're focusing on our generation, Generation X, but we're going to lean toward picking songs that transcend generations and that, young people will still know and appreciate. And this is certainly a case right here.
Yeah.
So that's my final choice for 1980. I know, Sheryl, you've been hemming and hawing a good long while on your final choice here.
Yeah, I've kind of been going back and forth. I narrowed it down to this band, and I was also sort of wavering between two songs, but I'm sticking with Squeeze, Pulling Muscles from a Shell, which came out on their album Argy. Is it? How do you pronounce it, Mike? Argy Bargy?
Hard G or soft G?
I think it's RG.
I guess I'm not really sure what that actually means.
I don't know. They're pretty quirky, so I could see them just making up things like that. So Squeeze, basically the main songwriters, Glenn Tilbrook and Chris Difford.
They're the Lennon and McCartney of Squeeze.
Well, they were hailed as the heirs to the Lennon and McCartney throne, which I think is very misleading. They didn't write songs together like Lennon and McCartney did. Chris wrote the lyrics and Glenn wrote the music. So, they didn't approach songwriting in the same way. They had nowhere near the catalog that Lennon and McCartney had.
Bit much to live up to.
Yeah. Squeeze does have a very Beatlesque sound to it. They're a power pop band. They're obviously influenced by Lennon and McCartney. But that doesn't mean that they're really writing at that caliber. However, they did have some really great songs. I think of Squeeze as more of like a singles band, personally.
First Squeeze album I think of is The Collection, singles 45s and under.
Me too. But they have at least two great albums, Argy Bargy and the one that has Tempted, East Side Story.
Yes.
At this time, this would have been their most well-known song in America. The following year, in 1981, they actually had a hit in America with Tempted.
I think we'll be talking about that song in a few weeks' time. Good chance.
Oh, yeah,
Good
for sure.
chance.
That song's definitely going to be on our playlist. This is the last album that features Jools Holland on keyboards. After this album, actually, Jools Holland leaves to pursue a solo career, and then he went on to be a host of a popular music TV show in the UK, The Tube, and then later he had with Jools Holland.
Yep, one of the great music shows. Yeah.
One of the great music shows that went on for years. In fact, it might still be a new production. They're definitely a quirky band. Their first couple singles are more quirky. They kind of were getting away from that and more just into like the concise pop songs here, which Pulling Muscles from a Shell, I would definitely say falls in that category, like a power pop song.
I kind of lump them in with the likes of XTC, Split Ends.
Yeah. Like XTC, I think they very much have like a storytelling way to their songwriting. And this is a good example of that. And Chris Difford wrote this song. Basically, it's like a snapshot of a seaside holiday based on his experiences as a kid.
Is Difford more the lyric guy and Tilbrook the music guy?
Yes.
In this? Yeah.
Yes, that's how they wrote. Difford wrote the lyrics and Tilbrook wrote the music. And
Tilbrook, most of the lead vocals. Difford occasionally.
Yeah, they did swap back and forth a bit. Early on, I think Difford sang more of their songs that actually were hits, like Up the Junction.
Cool for Cats.
Yeah. And he has a very quirky style. His voice is a lot lower and not really very melodic. But Glenn Tilbrook has a great voice, like much in that more higher register, but just a really great pop voice.
Agreed.
This song is actually kind of interesting because it starts out immediately with the vocals. There's no kind of like intro or anything. And there's a lot of words in this song. because, it's really telling a story. It's painting a picture. And that's one of the things that they did really well, I think, is they were very poetic in that way, as far as just kind of setting a scene in their songs.
Are you going to explain what the devil this song is about? Because I don't have a clue.
Messing around with a girl behind the cabin at a summer retreat with his...
What's the William Tell and the Maid Marian and the pulling the mussels from the shell? And it's just a lot of...
Do you really want me to say it?
Well, now I do, definitely.
Pulling mussels from a shell is basically what he was describing, like feeling up a girl.
Okay, down below. Right, okay.
Yes.
All right, now that we've got that sorted out.
The Maid Marian, I don't know. Like I said, there's so many lyrics in this song. I never even knew what he was saying in that part. I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, okay. And this is one of the things I really like about this song, just how he fits so many words and the cadence of kind of how he sings them, that it's kind of hard to understand a lot of the lyrics.
A lot of different are very wordy. Like Cool for Cats, she's spitting out all kinds of lyrics.
Yeah. So this is one of those songs too, and I think they would continue to do this more going forward. Is more just kind of like telling a story, and like Tempted, which would be the song that most people would know by Squeeze, really kind of follows that same process. Anyway, I don't know. I just think it's a really cool song. It's just a great power pop song. It has a really cool guitar solo, and it bounces kind of from one channel to the next at the end. And
these guys they're good players. I mean, it's these guys
are great players. Glenn and Chris both play guitar and sing. The guitar solo on this song is really cool. A great example, though, of his skill is Another Nail to My Heart, which is also the other single from this album.
Not a really good song.
It has the coolest guitar solo in it. And
in fact, I might even prefer that song.
I may too. See, I told you I was wavering back and forth between these two songs. The thing about Another Nail, I think the guitar solo is awesome in it, and it's a very cool song, but it gets a little bit boring. So that's why I chose this one instead. But yeah, I mean, I think he's like extremely underrated as a guitarist, and they're all great players. It's got Jules' signature kind of ragtime piano sound solo.
Very accomplished piano player. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It also seems like one of these songs that is really hard to sing, because if you watch live performances of this, it's almost always flat when they sing it live. Glenn Tilbrook is a good vocalist. It just makes me think that this must be a pretty tough song to sing. And it does kind of seem like it's in a different key or something. There's something about it that's just like not totally natural, but it really works. And I really like their voices together. Glenn's got that higher register. Chris sings in that lower kind of, and you can hear him in the backup vocals and the chorus.
By the way, Argy Bargy or Argy Bargy, either way is acceptable, is slang for a lively discussion, dispute, or argument. Thus, arguments.
Okay.
So that is the meaning of that phrase.
They like funny wordplay, and that's similar to XTC in that way, I think.
As you can imagine, the American record company, which was A&M Records, not too thrilled with the title of this album, because the meaning...
They're like, how do you pronounce it?
Yes,
what does it mean?
What in the world does that mean? But they were steadfast, and they wanted it, and they got it. Yeah, Squeeze, interesting. So, I mean, they're coming out of the punk new wave scene in England, and there's kind of two different types of bands that came out. You've got the amateurish bands, literally the DIY types, kind of following the footsteps of the Sex Pistols. And then you've got the wing of bands that were kind of more influenced by the pub rock scene for the mid-'70s. And these guys could all play their instruments very well. So Squeeze fits in the latter.
Yeah, John Cale produced their first record, which is also interesting because they took their name from the Velvet Underground album, the much maligned Velvet Underground album, Squeeze.
The one that didn't have Lou Reed.
Right. Didn't have anyone except Doug Yule. And then John Cale produces their first album.
Mike, your memories of Squeeze, contemporary memories?
I like them.
Yeah.
You liked this song when it came out? Do you remember hearing it? Do you remember?
Yes. I think that the thing that you're saying about the songs being storytelling about kind of average English life, but with a little bit of flair thrown in. I was already a big XTC fan, and it was somewhat similar to me in style. So I wasn't so much into their albums. I was into the singles.
45s and
And I
under.
was and I was into their poppier stuff.
They're one of those, and I don't really think there's a lot of bands like this, but they are one of those bands that definitely they are best represented by their singles. Even though they have what are considered 5-star albums in their catalog.
I have not really explored their albums. I mean, I've got some of their later stuff, like the late 80s, early 90s stuff that they released, Babylon and On. And
Well, and they had some hits in the later 80s too that were really heavily rotated on MTV, like Hourglass.
East Side Story and RG Bargy both are great albums, and I've come to appreciate them much more today than back when they came out.
I think this song will fit really well on our playlist.
Sure. All right. Now, Mike, I was very happy about your song choice for 1980 because it was right there on the cusp for me. Didn't make the leap and make my list, but I'm glad to have it on our playlist. And that is Talking Heads, Once in a Lifetime, the original studio version from the Remain in Light album.
Yep. You talked about how long ago your podcast of 1980 started. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have this list of 1980 songs that I started months and months ago. And so I'm going through them, and there's a lot of good songs, but Once in a Lifetime, to me, not just the song, but the art piece of what it is, because it was the forefather of the artsy video and what a video can do for a song.
And this was even before MTV.
Yeah. And also the melding of rhythms and international rhythms and incorporating other song styles into something that was new and different. That really hadn't been done a whole lot, other than arguably Brazilian music in some of the funk and jazz of the early 70s. But that is instrumental, where this was not just instrumental, but also the words and how the call and response nature of it, the African rhythm leanings compared to the religious overtone, and the way that it's kind of preached and call and response.
I think David Byrne had studied preachers, right? That kind of fed into
Yes.
From all over the world.
Right.
Yes. And so all of that in itself is big. And then you get to what the words are and the meaning of it. And it's really interesting going back and looking at reviews of the song and people talking about the song and what it means to them, because like any great art piece, there are people that take it one way and there are people that take it another. And to me, it also speaks of human nature. And I break it down to, there's the people that think it's all about how you just go through life doing the same thing over and over again. Then you wake up one morning and, my God, what have I done?
How did I get here?
How did I get here? Yeah.
Yeah, how did it get here? And others take it as a rebellion against that nature and go out and do something. And it really comes down to how people are either glass half empty or glasses half full type of attitude towards life. But my first experiences with that song either were on the radio. There was a radio station called KJET on the AM radio.
Way at the end of the dial.
Right at the end of the dial.
AM radio station, yeah.
Yeah, it was an AM radio station, and they played the most alternative stuff that you could find on radio. But it was very little punk, a lot of new wave, a lot of the new wave and synth band stuff of the late 70s, early 80s. And of course, they'd play that a lot. But what really impacted me, and I was trying to do research to make sure that my mind has this correct, and I don't know if it really is. I remember watching the video, and I remember watching the video on a network TV program, and I believe it was on Fridays. There was a short-lived
Oh yeah, on ABC.
series.
Yeah, their ABC's competition for Saturday Night Live on Friday nights. Yeah.
Yeah, but they'd have really cool musical acts.
Yes.
I mean, SNL had cool musical acts, but they'd stop at a certain point. I mean, it was something for them to have Elvis Costello on Saturday Night Live. And
he'd never be back on again after what he did.
Yes. But
is he still,
I remember,
is he still banned? Still to this day?
He's not officially banned. That's just a rumor. But Fridays was much more cutting edge, even though they were still popular bands in the alternative realm, like Devo and The Clash. But the music performances from Fridays, go online and find those because they are really cool.
More of a broad scope of music on Saturday Night Live. Fridays really consistently featured these current cutting edge new wave acts.
Yeah. And seeing that video for the first time, it was an art piece and the whole quirkiness of it. And it's like, oh my, look at this strange guy doing this strange song.
And what he ended up doing in that video became iconic for David Byrne. You know, I mean, it is really what people think of when they think of David Byrne. And he carried that on through into the live show too, like in Stop Making Sense. He did the same kind of movements and it started from that video.
Yeah. And even the song itself never charted. It got to 14 in the UK, I think. It didn't chart.
It didn't chart at that time. It did actually chart in 86 when it was re-released from the Stop Making Sense.
Yeah.
Far inferior, too. Now that I heard the Stop Making Sense version before I heard the original studio version. And, you know,
me too.
I never thought a whole lot about the song. I mean, you think about the goofy stuff he's doing on stage. But I remember the first time seeing that video and hearing the original version, like, oh, God, this is way better.
And all the stuff that goes into the making of the song and how they did the song as a group and with Brian Eno and splicing together things and just the art of making that song. And then the art of making the video. Tony Basil was the one who came in and produced that video. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind.
Yeah. She was a choreographer for years for many rock bands.
She was Paula Abdul before there was Paula Abdul.
Good call.
But much cooler. And she just put David in a room by himself with a video camera, and he just moved around to the music, and then they went in and found the movements that fit best and edited them together.
And I think it's important to note she left the room.
Yes.
Well, just turn the camera on, but she left the room so he wouldn't feel self-conscious.
Yeah, and he was just by himself. It would be interesting to find out if there was any videos before this one that used blue screen. And it is, in today's standards, such a hack job of blue screen. The artifacting and everything, but how it's done. And even Tony says it was low production, but the repeating of things throughout that song and the repeating of things throughout the video, it's all this. I mean, it just ties together so well as a whole art piece, which is what the Talking Heads, I mean, up until that point, there were a number of rock and roll bands that had art background. You know, the Rolling Stones all met in art school.
The Who, Pete Townsend.
Did John Lennon go to art school too?
John Lennon went to art school.
And Genesis. There's a number of, especially in the UK, but not as much in the US, but Talking Heads all came from the Rhode Island
RISD.
School of Design, which was a big time design school.
Very expensive. They're all kind of prep school types.
Yep. But the song is an art piece and more than just the song. And for that reason, I think it exploded for me what music could be. Not just music, but music video and the whole visual aspect of it and the design of it.
Well, it's an incredible song. Two things come to mind for me. One, the groove, which is just this off-kilter killer groove.
Yep.
And then
it is off-kilter. It has like a dissonance about it that is just like, and it really works with the vocals and David Byrne's just appearance, everything about it, because it's unsettling in a way.
Okay,
you know?
So now Talking Heads, they're so well established in an institution now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that you don't really think about it. But David Byrne's vocals were so different and weird and quirky and like nothing anybody had heard before. I mean, you couldn't imagine somebody singing like that on a record and expecting people to buy it a few years before that. But now you just don't even think about it. But then I don't
and
think...
in some ways, it's not even really singing, too. It's more just like talking and
Yeah.
And then was that the first video that they did? Because I don't think I've seen any videos for them for anything previous to that. So it might have been the first time a lot of people saw what David Byrne looked like. So you add in his visual appearance to that quirky vocal style.
Yep.
And it's just so unlike anything you would expect to be up front in a band that's selling a lot of records in the United States. You know?
I mean, it became one of the staples for MTV, which started a year later. And I think it's one of the reasons that it, along with Speaking in Tongues, got it back on the charts back in the 80s.
Stop Making Sense.
Stop Making Sense.
Well, really, Speaking in Tongues, they had a hit on with Burning Down the House.
Yeah, Burning Down the House was their biggest hit.
Yeah. And that probably was the first time I'd ever even heard Talking Heads, was when that hit. And then, Stop Making Sense comes out shortly after that, and that just got hammered on MTV. God, they played those videos so much on MTV.
And that's where I first heard this song, too.
Right.
And, up until then, well, the first two Talking Heads albums are more pop-oriented. And then you get into Fear of Music, where they're definitely dabbling into the Afro beat.
Really
and
cool album.
They're starting to move in that direction. But there's still more songs on Fear of Music. Like, it's more traditional in that sense, just like pop, new wave type songs. But when you get to this album, To Remain in Light, this is a very challenging album. I mean, Once in a Lifetime is the most kind of just like pop song on this album.
And it's not pop at all, really.
And it's not pop, but it's the most that follows kind of the formula of a pop song. And, like Mike said, it's produced, and some of these songs like this co-written with Brian Eno. And
this is their third album with Eno at this point.
And they were really drawing on the Afrobeat musicians like Fela Kuti. That was the sound they were going for, the tribal beats.
The biggest influence on their sound on this record, for sure.
Yeah. And they basically, the way they recorded this whole album was they were just jamming. They just recorded the jams, and then Brian Eno would go in and isolate the best parts and have them kind of practice those parts and then put them together. And that's why there's a lot, that repetition, like that repetitive sound you were talking about.
And then he Eno-fied them, but with his electronic weirdness.
Yeah, he did. But Jerry Harrison had a big part in that too, because Jerry Harrison, the keyboardist for the Talking Heads, he really put his stamp on, and this song in particular. And you've got that kind of bubbly synth sound.
And then at the end of the song, it sounds like this pipe organ drone that comes in.
It's a very dramatic, like church organ sound almost to it.
Kind of like the start of Chest Fever by the band.
Yeah. It is similar to that, actually.
But it has a little bit more bite and teeth to it. And it's, to me, the waking up of, oh my God,
what have I done?
What have I done?
So this album, for a lot of critics, best album of the year, right up there. Now, Sheryl and I, we were texting back and forth about this. I love this record to a point. I think it's a 5-star album, but it doesn't follow through to the end. It tails off over the last couple of tracks, because then
plus it's not an easy listen.
Yeah.
I mean, it really isn't. You have to work to get through this.
But Born Under Punches and The Great Curve. I mean, these grooves are just incredible, and it maintains that great energy and groove, and then it loses me at the end. I think it's just too much Eno there at the end with the ambient textures and stuff. What I was saying to Sheryl, I just listened to Joshua Tree, the Joshua Tree album, for the first time in a long time. I feel the same way about that record. It's a 5-star album until the final 2 tracks, and then it's like too much Daniel Lanois. I mean, those last 2 songs should have been on Daniel Lanois' solo album. It just kills the vibe. It kills
it, and it drags it. It just drags it down. Kind of.
But again, that's another Brian Eno Lanois combo on the production on that. But so Remaining Light doesn't make it as my number 1 album, but it almost does except for those last couple of tracks.
Well,
Mhm.
and this song is such a standout on the album, I think. And like how Mike was saying with the preacher feel to the vocals and with the video, how David Byrne really studied these evangelists.
Kind of these awkward genuflecting. It's,
Yeah. And in the video too,
Yeah.
you see in the background, he does that thing with his arm where he's like, which became an iconic movement that David Byrne did with his hand against his arm. And that actually comes from a tradition. I mean, it's in the video, you can see it from a traditional like African or Indian or something,
When your average music fan thinks of Talking Heads and David Byrne imagery, number one is probably the big suit. And then number
Yes.
two would be that thing he's doing down his
That
arm.
hand
Yeah.
motion. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
But that was all inspired by actual and well, it was a combination of things, going back to evangelists, preachers, but also people that are like speaking in tongues, and having like
out of body experiences and trances.
yeah,
and
trances, like
the
people
whole-
in trances, like that's what they were studying. And that's really what he conveys in both the vocals and in the video. It's interesting because after this, all of the members from Talking Heads split apart, except, Chris and Tina together and did solo albums or other projects. Chris and Tina did Tom Tom Club, which Genius of Love is a song that is hugely sampled in the hip hop world. And they actually were doing rap on that album, which is also kind of what plays into some of Remain in Light.
There is some rap on that
early
record.
rap,
Yes.
like Curtis Blow the Breaks. They were influenced by that. And so you've got Chris and Tina breaking off and doing Tom Tom Club, still very tribal rhythms, African type rhythms. And then you had Jerry Harrison had a solo album that came out in 81 that also follows a lot of the same template as Remain in Light with the polyrhythmic and kind of the hip hop influences and used a lot of the same musicians. And then David Byrne and Brian Eno did My Life in the Bush Ghosts, which is more bizarre, tons of sampling, but it still has the same Afro rhythms. And he also did in 81, the Catherine Wheel also has a very similar sound to this. And so they continued doing this in their solo projects too. Those albums all came out in 1981.
The other thing I appreciate about the Talking Heads in this song is that the Talking Heads talked about America in a way that was different. And it's really interesting nowadays to look back on David Byrne, what David Byrne is now. To me now, he seems like the ultimate American NPR guy. He's almost like Garrison Keillor. He is kind of this Americana icon.
Well, he has that Broadway show now that is like Utopia or something. What is it? And it's about America, right?
Yeah, and what Talking Heads and especially David Byrne mean to American culture. And it really, this is the blossoming of that, is this song and that album and where it would go from there.
You would know this, Mike, certainly. Maybe you too, Sheryl. Of course, they've reissued Stop Making Sense recently. And as part of the promotion for this, they've actually all gotten back together for the first time in a long time. Since their last album, Naked, David Byrne went solo, and there had been hard feelings between the two camps. I think they felt like David Byrne wasn't giving due credit to the other members of the band as far as composition of the songs and credits and such like. Over the years, David Byrne has come to realize, or we've learned, that he is on the autism spectrum, which kind of explains a lot of his quirky behavior and social struggles, social interactions. And I think that knowledge has helped him kind of deal with some things and help thaw the ice there. But the fact is, they're back all together, operating as a unit, at least on this promotional tour they're doing. And they're all in good health. And I can only hope that maybe new music is down the road for the original foursome.
Yep.
Anyhow, so none of us picked Remain in Light as the best album of the year, although we all appreciate it and like it. Mike, setting up your album, you already referenced Fridays. There's a great live performance by this band on Fridays from that era. And I'd just like to say, I called my shot here. I said Mike would pick this album. It was his album of the year, and he did. It's the Pretenders' debut album, self-titled.
Yes. Once again, there's a big list of albums from 80 that are really good. And as I listened to each one of them, I just kept on coming back to that Pretenders album because it is perfect from start to finish. It is a great rock album.
And it does rock.
Yeah.
It rocks, and Chrissie Hynde is just so amazing in her sneer, but then also being almost like a Motown crooner with Stop Your Sobbin' and Kid.
She's a great example of doing a lot with a little. Now, I love the timbre.
Yes.
I love the timbre of her voice, but the attitude is such a big part about why she is special and what she does with her instrument, which is, not a lot of range there, but what she does with it is just wonderful.
Yeah, and just how tight the band is, the different guitar effects.
Not nearly enough people know James Honeyman Scott's name. It's incredible.
What's his name?
James Honeyman Scott.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. See, I don't even know his name.
Sheryl can't even say his name. That's a tragedy. It really is.
Yeah. But every song, I know that Sheryl doesn't like Space Invader, but the instrumental.
I think it's the worst song on the album, but that's just because to me it breaks it up in a way that just feels unnecessary. And it bothers me when there's a song that doesn't have lyrics, and it's like, why not? Just put lyrics on it. It doesn't make sense not to. But I have to say, this is an album that I really never listened to that much before. I know
not at all for me.
Like Squeeze. No, me either. Like Squeeze, the Pretenders were always kind of a singles band to me.
Yep.
Like I listened to their singles collection and I really didn't listen to their full albums. And when I knew Mike was going to choose this as his album of the year, I was like, well, I better go listen to this album. Oh my God, this album is so good. I love this album. I think it warrants the praise it gets, especially for being one of the best debut albums ever. And it's incredible. Every song on it, except Space Invaders, it's amazing. And you're right about the guitars, about James. There is a guitar sound on this album that is unique and I think influential.
Oh, very,
But you don't hear, the credit being given in that regard.
Johnny Marr, I think, is one of the few people that has dropped his
Johnny
name.
Marr from the Smiths. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was just about to say that.
I mean, I know who he is now just because I've been reading about him, but I didn't know him by name. I didn't know what he had done on this album. And there is another tragedy here for sure. And that's the fact that he died after Pretenders 2 of a drug overdose. 2 of the main members of this band passed away from drug overdoses. And it was a totally different band once they went on to record Learning to Crawl, which had their biggest hits on it, biggest US hits.
Really, I mean, honestly, Mike, would you not agree? The greatness of this band, it's Chrissie Hynde and Jimmy Honeyman Scott. I mean, it's the rhythm section's good, but that's the genius of this band is that combo.
Yeah, and just the song choices with Precious and then the phone call, and it's got this sneering kind of just and up the neck, and then Tattooed Love Boys is just...
I love this song. The first 4 songs on this album are some of the greatest first songs on any album.
One of the all-time great side ones, you are saying?
Yes. Yep. If it weren't for that stupid Space Invaders, then it would just continue going that direction. You have The Wait, which has a really cool running bass line and awesome guitar licks. And then Stop Your Sobbin', which was the first single from this album.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that song does sound a lot different than the rest of the album. Just the sound, that song was produced by Nick Lowe and recorded before the rest of the album.
Chris Thomas produced the rest of the album.
Yep. And it's a Kinks cover written by Ray Davies.
Yeah.
And actually, this is what sparked the romance between Chrissie Hynde and Ray Davies, in which they later would have a child, get married, get divorced.
Still hard to comprehend that one.
Yes.
I know. But she idolized him, she idolized the Kinks.
Right.
And that was first single from this album. And it really does sound a lot different than the rest of the album. But Nick Lowe was asked to produce this album, and he did produce the single. But then he didn't want to produce the rest of it because he really didn't think the Chrissie songs were that great.
Oh.
He was like, I don't see a future for this band. So that was it. And then now he looks back on it, he's like, okay, never mind.
Well, Brass in Pocket is somewhat similar.
Well, it is. And Brass in Pocket to me also does sound different than the rest of these songs. And that's the one song that people know
And probably the reason I never listened to this album for years and years, because when that came out, I didn't care for it at all. I didn't like it.
Brass in Pocket was a UK #1. It hit 14 in the US. It was their biggest hit to that point, and it really does not sound like much else on this album.
No.
The album is one banger after another. And Sheryl, you were actually reconsidering your top album choice for the year at some point, weren't you?
Yeah.
I haven't listened to this album enough. I barely dipped my toe in it, to be honest. The first time that I listened to it, so I've got the remastered CD, the 2-disc one. The first time I listened to it, I put it on at night in bed with the headphones, and I mistakenly had disc 2 in rather than disc 1.
Oh, the demos with the...
And I'm listening to this, I'm like, God, this isn't at all what I was expecting. It's kind of raw and just, But then when I finally did get around to listening to it, again, it wasn't what I was expecting. It rocks a lot more than I was expecting. And that's because, Brass in Pocket being that lead single with that kind of slinky groove, I was expecting more in that vein. And this album, a lot of it really has balls.
Yeah, most of the album just rocks, and it deals all with angst and love and hate, and it's mean, it's sexy, but through it all, there's a shine of power pop that comes through and these hooks, and it ends with Mystery Achievement, which is just, Mystery Achievement is the great power pop song that Andy Partridge never wrote.
This album does one of the things that I love, and it doesn't happen that often, having the last song be like one of the coolest songs on the album. It's like this little pleasant surprise at the end. And I really do think, like you were saying, Matt, James Honeyman Scott elevates this album to a higher level and a whole sound that influenced a lot of other bands and that is really unique, is that guitar sound.
We talk about this album's got balls, it rocks, but it's his quieter, jangly sound that really is more the influential guitar sound for James Honeyman Scott. So Mike's album, Pretender's debut, Sheryl's album of the year was Pete Townsend with Empty Glass. Mine was XTC's Black Sea. Mike, you already referenced some of the great albums from the year. What were some of your other contenders?
So The River by Bruce Springsteen.
Yes. Again, another one that I still have to really dive into.
Which was my first Bruce Springsteen album that I bought and listened to over and over again. I like others better now, but that was my first foray into Bruce.
Hungry Heart was the hit from that album, which you heard on the radio a lot.
That would have been the first Springsteen song I ever heard.
Yeah, me too. But his voice, the vocals sound so different on that song because they sped him up. It does not sound like Bruce and really the rest of the album. And so it's kind of one of those singles like Brass in Pocket. If you bought that album, it really does not sound like Hungry Heart.
AC/DC's Back in Black, which I probably listened to a whole lot more than any other album from 1980. If you would have asked 1980 to 1982 me, I would have picked that way over Pretenders. The Police Zenyatta Mondada.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I didn't have the album. The first time I heard that whole album, kind of radio lore, back in the late 70s, early 80s, on Friday nights, I think it was KSW, it could have been KZOK, at midnight would play a whole album.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's the first time I listened to Zenyatta Mondada in full, was on the radio.
Yeah, and that would have been my first exposure to the Police, would have been da-do-da-do-da-da-da, hearing that on the radio.
Yeah, actually, that could have been a contender for me for my favorite album of 1980, too. And it's actually sort of weird we didn't pick anything from that album. No songs, nothing.
You were talking about Driven to Tears early on being one of your songs, but you never...
Yeah, I know. I love that song. Yes.
The guitar solo on that is just... one of the... I wanted to make a point about guitars before we got off James Honeyman Scott. 1980 is really a year where you had these different guitar heroes emerging with all these colors and textures rather than just riffs and runs. So Honeyman Scott's a good example of the different guitar sounds on that Pretenders album. The crazy solo on Driven to Tears, Andy Summers is a perfect example of a really unique guitar style. Guys like John McGeough, of Magazine and later Susie and the Banshees certainly
Yep.
falls into that category. And Adrian Belew, of course, on the Remaining Lights. All these different textures and effects.
And kind of to that point, one of my other favorite albums that just couldn't make it to number one of 1980 is the Feelies' Crazy Rhythms.
Oh, just listen to that for the first time the other day, and it is good. Yeah.
Love
really
that
good.
album.
Talk about guitar layering and effects.
Yes.
And the Young Marble Giants' Colossal Youth still holds up to me today. That's
Very
a great
influential.
album.
I remember listening to that a long time ago and making a note of it, but I've not revisited it in the decades since. That's definitely something I'm going to have to get back into.
Yeah, they just reissued it recently. The Soft Boys Underwater Moonlight, which is an amazing album.
Yep. That was my runner-up for Album of the Year.
And you picked a song from that album.
Yep.
Rockpile Seconds for Pleasure is a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. That came out in 1980.
Kind of a super group.
UK pub rock.
Yeah, pub rock super group. Peter Gabriel, his third album. Echo and the Bunnymen Crocodile, which was amazing.
Big year for Liverpool in 1980.
First album.
And The Teardrop Explodes, Kilimanjaro, another great album.
Yep. And Killing Joke, Joy Division's Closer. Joan Jett's Bad Reputation, I think, deserves mention. And then I really love the first Psychedelic Furs album. And I re-listened to it again.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, I was hoping it would hold up a little bit better. It's still good. It's still really good. But their first album has a darkness. It's much more jarring than Pretty in Pink and the John Hughes type of...
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's...
raw and primitive sounding. Yeah.
Much less polished.
And there was part of me was hoping that when I re-listened to it, I'd go, yeah, this could give the Pretenders a run for its money. But no, it's really, in the end, that Pretenders album is just from front to back a great piece.
Well, I will echo your enthusiasm for the Echo and the Bunnymen Crocodiles album. Also, listening to that Teardrop Explodes album for the first time in a long time, I was really on a Julian Cope kick a while back. So I'd listened to that album in ages. And it's odd. I don't know if you guys listened to it recently, but upon returning to it, it struck me as funny because it's like, it's just way poppier than I remember, but it's also way more.
Yeah.
It's way more psychedelic than I remember too, which sounds like a contradiction, but it's true.
Julian Cope is kind of the Lenny Kaye of English psychedelia pop freak beat.
And krautrock.
Yeah, wrote a book about krautrock.
Yeah, so psychedelia, I think, runs deep in him because that's just what he really loves. But I felt the same way, Matt. I was like, wow, this is poppier than I was expecting. That was the thing that sort of hit me the most about that album.
Others for me, Blondie Auto American. I'd never really listened to that album. The only Blondie album I'd ever listened to at all extensively. It was Parallel Lines. I had the singles, of course, one of which will certainly feature in 1981. Tide is High and Rapture. I've got both of those 45s. But Auto America is a really interesting album. They're just experimenting with so many different styles on that, which makes it kind of interesting. This is one that I picked up in the last couple of years for collector value, but Confunction, Spirit of Love, this very interesting band because it's a funk group, but it's kind of like a combination of funk and yacht rock. So it's got this really slick, smooth vibe to it. That's one that I'm definitely going to listen to more. The Dead Kennedys' Fresh Food for Rotting Vegetables comes out this year. Pretty iconic album. Although I don't love the album start to finish, Holidays in Cambodia is certainly one of the amazing songs from 1980. And I love their version of Viva Las Vegas, too. English Beats, I Just Can't Stop It. We talked about that when we did our episode talking about ska. That's a great, great album. What else have we got here? The one I probably listened to the most that's rather new to me is the Manfred Mann Earth Band album that came out that year, Chance.
Yeah.
And I was very close to picking a song off that for the playlist. Manfred Mann's cover of Bruce Springsteen's Blinded by the Light, one of the greatest covers in the history of popular music. and one of my all-time favorite songs, period.
And a song that you chose for the playlist.
Right. And they do another song off the same first Bruce Springsteen album, the Asbury Park album, For You, which I'd never heard before. And that's another killer. Really cool song.
Yeah.
One that should have been a bigger hit, I think. Although the song, I can see why it wasn't. The song, it's just too wordy, the song. But it's just an incredible arrangement. What they did with Bruce's songs, very impressive. What else from 1980s and Yada Mandata, of course. Police has always been one of my favorite bands. Prince's Dirty Mind comes out in 1980, which was really kind of a big step up for him. It's a short album, very funky, very dirty, but super cool. Ramones' End of the Century, I nearly picked Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio for the playlist. Love that song. Love it. This is the Ramones produced by Phil Spector. The album sounds like hot garbage, but that's a perfect matchup there on that particular song, at least. And there's some other cool stuff on the record. Linda Ronstadt's Mad Love, that's a cool record. The Specials, again, I'm rather new to that one, sad to say, but that's a super cool record. The River, also just have started to dip my toe into that. I've really only listened to side one of the 2 discs, but it's killer. U2's Boy, we already...
Yeah, I had that on my list, along with The Clash Sandinista.
Yes, I love that album.
And I didn't mention XTC Black Sea, which, is...
Yeah, incredible.
Just amazing.
Record.
An amazing piece.
Van Halen gets into an interesting period in there with Women and Children First and Fair Warning. No hits off those albums, but a lot of Van Halen fans, that's their favorite era of the band. A little heavier sound, a little more experimental. That's a cool record. And then Sheryl will back me up. I think Sheryl is probably close to the Yes Drama album.
Oh, yeah.
This probably deserves more time, but we just don't have it. Yeah. So, for me, Yes starts with 90125. That was the first Yes I ever heard. And then probably Mojo Magazine, which I've been reading pretty much since it came out. They do that, Last Night a Record Changed My Life. If I were to do that, I would probably pick the classic Yes album, because after being a huge fan, it started with Asia. So that was the first tape I bought was the Asia debut album. We'll be talking more about that in 1981.
Oh, yeah.
And then from there, you get 90125 album comes out a couple of years later. And that was massive for me. So then it's like, well, I love this album by Yes. Oh, boy, I've never heard of this band. Oh, they've been around since this long. Oh, they've got this greatest hits. I'll order it from the RCA Record Club, get the tape. And then it's just like...
You're transcended into a whole other world.
Wow. Yeah, so that was probably the most influential first album listen of my life. But then from there, I think Drama would have been the next thing that I got. And I still love that record. When you don't have these preconceptions about the band, or about John Anderson being the lead singer and the way they're supposed to sound. And when you came to them with the 1980s sound that they had, it's an easier entry into that record. Now, I know a lot of Yes hardcore fans probably rebelled at that album and tour, but I love that, right? I still do.
I came to that in a much different route because I was a big fan of the 70s Yes before even really I cared much about 90125, because I was really into classic rock radio. Yeah. And so I, started with like Roundabout and Long Distance Run Around, and then went to the albums from there, the 70s albums. And then I did become a fan of 90125. And Drama is one of those albums that I did not explore until much later, because in their catalog and for hardcore fans, a lot of them just shunned it because John Anderson is no longer in the band. Trevor Horn, Jeff Downes, that were the Buggles who did Video Killed the Radio Star, also on our playlist.
1979.
They actually took over Trevor Horn took over as the lead singer, Jeff Downes as the keyboardist, and recorded this one-off album, Drama, that also includes Steve Howe, Chris Squire, and Alan White, who are original, semi-original members of Yes.
One of them's original.
And well, one of them's original. I guess that would be Chris Squire. And then Steve Howe came on not long after that. And then Alan White replaced Bill Bruford after Close to the Edge. And I really had always kind of shunned drama because I was of the mindset that, well, that's not Yes. And that's not traditionally Yes, because we don't have John Anderson on vocals. So I really didn't start discovering that album until maybe about 10 years ago now. So pretty current times, I guess, as far as long as I've been a Yes fan. Blown away. I mean, completely blown away by this album. And a lot of it has to do with the rhythm section.
You're expecting it to be more poppy, right? Because it's the Buggles coming in, and it is as prog as anything in their catalog. Maybe the most prog album they did.
And not just prog, it's pretty heavy too. Yeah. It's got a heaviness to it. And Alan White, he was a session musician on John Lennon's Imagine. This is his finest moment, I think, on this album. So yeah, I love drama. I would say it's actually one of my favorite Yes albums, but I kind of think of it as like a separate entity from the Yes catalog.
Should have been
it's so different.
Should have been a different band title, you think?
They started this band with the name Cinema. Well, no. Actually, when they were going to do 90125, they actually were going to call themselves Cinema. And they could have done that with this album too. But I agree. I think this album is incredible. And I think that anybody who is a fan of Yes, who doesn't know about this album or has thought that it was something they really didn't care about because it didn't have John Anderson on it, should listen to it and give it a chance because it's a great album.
Sheryl, some near-miss albums for you. I know Permanent Waves by Rush, probably up there. You were almost going to pick a song from that for the playlist.
Yeah, I was really close to picking Spirit of Radio for Rush, but I'm going to wait because in 1981, Moving Pictures comes out. So we'll definitely be picking something from that album.
Got to go there.
So yeah, I would say, because honestly, that's not one of my favorite Rush albums. I love that song. There's some prog-based albums like Yes Drama that I really love from that year. Genesis Duke, which has some of their more pop hits. They're starting to have hits on the pop charts now.
Misunderstanding was the first Genesis song I remember hearing on the radio. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A total ripoff of Sly and the Family Stone. Hot Fun in the Summertime.
Oh, totally. Yeah. The same exact drum beat for sure. Todd Rundgren and Utopia, Adventures in Utopia came out that year. My favorite Utopia album.
Set Me Free was the single off that, right?
Set Me Free was the single.
I remember not liking that very much.
I like it, but I really like cheesy stuff like that. So
well, I might like it now, but I remember at the time thinking, didn't like it.
Alan Parsons Project, Turn of a Friendly Card, which had Games People Play and Time, which is one of their
first Alan Parsons Project songs I remember hearing. Yeah.
John Anderson from Yes also had a solo album that year, Song of Seven, which I really like. Man for Man Chance. I'm also a big fan of that album.
In fact, the lead track from that album could be our theme song. We talked about that.
It could. I
wish we could use it. Lies Through the 80s. What a cool song.
There's two songs I wish we could use as our theme song. One is a Donnie Iris song called Bring on the 80s. And the other one is the Manfred Mann Lies from the 80s. Yes.
Of which none of our high school classmates would have any clue about either of those songs, probably.
No one else would know those songs. An interesting album that came out this year, Daryl Hall had a solo album produced by Robert Fripp from King Crimson called Sacred Songs. Really interesting album.
He'd sung on the Exposure album the year before, the Robert Fripp album.
Yeah, so that was the connection between the two. And there's a song on that album called In 4/4 Time, which is really cool, but a lot of it is more artsy and it's interesting. Hall & Oates also had an album this year too with Voices, which had Kiss on My List.
That was under consideration for me for a while, for a song.
Phil Lynott, bass player and lead singer from Thin Lizzy. If anybody's listened to our podcast before, they know that I love Thin Lizzy. He had a solo album, his first solo album that in 1980 called Solo in Soho, which has some really cool stuff on it. Another prog band from the 70s, Gentle Giant Civilian, also a band that I thought I really didn't care about anything that came out after the 70s, but this is a really good album. Queen, The Game, had a big hit for them. Another One Bites the Dust. I know Matt doesn't like the song, but I did.
It's okay now. I couldn't stand it at the time.
I like it now. I liked it at the time, and it's actually one of my favorite Queen albums, the whole album, all the way through.
I liked Play the Game. I like that song. Flash Gordon's soundtrack came out in 1982.
Yes.
Yeah. Flash.
Flash.
Savior of the universe.
Yes.
We sold two
I
of
love that
those
too.
albums this week for some reason.
Well, people should be buying that album. Another oddity that came out this year was a Sean Cassidy album called Wasp.
You know what? He's underrated because he's so pretty.
He and David Cassidy are both underrated.
He's too pretty for his own good. I like his singles.
He was a bubblegum pop teen idol, but this album is produced by Todd Rundgren. It was actually a Record Store Day release a couple years back. So it has a cult following. It's mostly cover songs like David Bowie's Rebel Rebel. He does The Who's So Sad About Us. But there are 4 songs on there that he and Todd Rundgren co-wrote. Definitely bizarre and strange, and kind of put him more in
Color me
in
intrigued.
that camp.
I'm gonna check that out. I had no idea.
Yeah. Let's see. Pat Benatar, Crimes of Passion, came out this year with Hit Me With Your Best Shot. Police Zenyatta Modada, one of my favorite albums, really. It's weird, actually. I'm thinking about it now, like why I didn't pick something from this album or this album itself, because I love this album. Billy Joel, Glass Houses, his best album as far as I'm concerned.
Bunch of songs you still hear a lot.
Sandinista, which we've already talked about, The Clash, and I even made the claim that I think Sandinista is as good as London Calling if you take away one of the albums.
Okay.
So Somebody Got Murdered, great song from that album. OMD, Organization, which I'm surprised you didn't mention this, Mike, because it also has Enola Gay, one of their great early albums.
Enola Gay was, I didn't go through my favorite singles. I didn't get asked what my other favorite singles, and Enola Gay.
Well, we haven't gone to that.
We haven't gotten there yet, but that album is a great album, and there's a lot of really cool early OMD albums that a lot of people probably aren't familiar with, especially if you kind of became familiar with them more through Pretty in Pink soundtrack or in the mid 80s.
All my dreams came true last night. Is that OMD?
No.
Or is that ABC?
It's not. That's Be Near Me by ABC.
Okay,
Echo and the Bunnymen Crocodiles. Let's see. Public Image Limited, second edition, came out in 1980. Johnny Lydon's band after the Sex Pistols. Really cool album if you like dub and that kind of sound. It's their second album. It was called Metal Box in the UK, and it came out in the US as called Second Edition.
I just listened to Pop Tones the other night. What a bizarre, strange song that just goes on and on and on, but a cool vibe to it. That's one of those things. There's just not enough time to listen to everything,
I know. Well, this is what I spend all my time doing. Yeah. So, actually, my favorite Jam album, Sound Effects, came out in 1980. Also, kind of was on my list of possibly favorite albums of the year because I love that album.
All right, so stray tracks that didn't quite make it for me. Already mentioned "Tide Is High" by Blondie, which the singles released in 1980. Brothers Johnson "Stomp," which is a cool R&B track from that year. Everybody take it from the top. We're gonna stomp all night. Elvis Costello. None of us mentioned Elvis Costello's "Get Happy" album. I'm surprised by that.
"Get Happy." That's not my favorite Elvis Costello album. Still, it's one of my least favorites.
Riot Act, a great song on there. Christopher Cross again. Sheryl. I'm surprised you were almost picking a Christopher Cross song, but "Ride Like the Wind," "Sailing" from his debut album. I already mentioned the two Dead Kennedy songs that I love from Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. Here's a great song for somebody who works in radio. You always have radio songs that touch your heart. "Pilot of the Airwaves" by Charlie Dore, one-hit wonder. Great, great song from 1980. British gal, kind of from the pub rock scene. The Eagles had the long run in 1980. "I Can't Tell You Why." Amazing soulful vocal performance by Timothy B. Schmidt, who joined the band for that last album, replacing Randy Meisner on bass and vocals.
Fits in our yacht rock.
Also, they released a live album that year, and "Seven Bridges Road," just a beautiful harmony, bluegrass-sounding track. It's a Steve Young song that they covered. Wonderful
Great
singing.
example of their vocal abilities.
Sheryl picked an English beat song for the playlist off I Just Can't Stop It. Had I chosen a song for that album, it would have been Best Friend. Love that song. We already talked about Misunderstanding by Genesis, Kiss on my list, Hall & Oates. We got our country crossover song on there, but Waylon Jennings' theme from the Dukes of Hazzard came out that year. Love that one. This song came out in 1980, but I'm going to push it to 81 because it was a late year release and it sold enough in 81 to have a huge impact. And that was Kool and the Gang's Celebration, which I may, in fact, end up picking for the 1981 playlist.
It's a huge song.
We talked about this song when we did our Yacht Rock episode, but Cool Change by Little River Band. Sheryl, this one might make her skin crawl, but I love Benny Mardones' Into the Night. The first issue of that came out in 1980.
I like the song. I just don't like the lyric.
Bob Marley's final studio album comes out that year. Redemption Song would have been on the playlist for me, but it just doesn't fit the vibe of a group gathering, playlist.
Great song,
but
though.
that song is up there with the best of Bob Dylan's protest songs for me. And I think of that in the Bob Dylan vein. I think that's Bob Marley's Blowing in the Wind. Off the Xanadu soundtrack, we already had a Xanadu song, but Suddenly, the duet between Olivia Newton-John and Cliff Richard. Love that.
We could have picked the ELO songs from that album, too.
All over the world. I still have my 45 of that. Another country crossover smash, Eddie Rabbitt had actually two in 1980 with I Love a Rainy Night, but Driving My Life Away is the one that I prefer. In addition to Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio, the Ramones released Rock and Roll High School from the movie of the same name that year, another classic Ramones track. This one was close. Now, when we were driving back and I was running through all these songs with the family in the car, this was my wife's favorite song of all the ones that I played, Roxy Music's Over You. Very poppy song by Roxy Music. Another song that is one of my top songs of the year, but just doesn't fit the vibe of the playlist. The Saints, Don't Send Me Roses, the first version of that off the great Paralytic Tonight, Dublin Tomorrow EP that they released in 1980. It was their first music they released after the guitarist Ed Cooper left the group to form his own band, Laughing Clowns. Sheryl was close to picking this song. I was too. Paul Simon, Late in the Evening.
Great drum track from Steve Gadd on that album.
Great everything on that track. This barely missed for me. We've already got Donna Summer, but On the Radio, her last big disco hit, came out in 1980. One of the last great disco hit songs. Talking Heads. So, we've got Mike has gotten Once in a Lifetime onto the playlist. They kind of signposted where they were going with the Remain in Light album on their previous album, Fear of Music, with the lead track on that album, E Zimbra, which is actually my favorite Talking Heads song in that Afrobeat vein. So that was very close to making it for me. Joe Walsh, All Night Long, again off the soundtrack to Urban Cowboy. And then this is a very obscure song. Not many people know of this band. Zolar X was kind of part of the LA glam scene just before punk rock took off in Los Angeles. Very interesting. Look this band up. Zolar, Z-O-L-A-R-X, the letter X. It's just a weird group. In a just world, Zolar X would trade places with Kiss and have sold all the millions of albums that Kiss has sold.
Except they're dressed like aliens instead of whatever Kiss is.
They dressed like aliens, and they actually, whenever they were in public, like Kiss would never be seen without their makeup. Zolar X would be out in public with their helmets and their antenna. And it's their own language. But a song called Rocket Roll came out in 1980. Just a killer rock and roll guitar
song. That song should have been a hit.
Oh,
really.
My God.
It's a really cool song.
In fact,
I'd never heard of this. You mentioned this. I'm like, what? Zolar X. And I listened to it. I was like, this is so cool. This song should have been a hit.
I know. Mike, have you listened to Zolar X?
I know about the band, and I think I know what song it is.
You'll like it. Go listen to it. You will like it.
Just a killer riff to start this song. Just a great guitar riff.
Okay, so is that it for songs for you?
Yeah, well, I got to Z, so I'm at the end.
Oh, yeah. I have a few songs. A couple of them we already talked about. Spirit of Radio by Brush, another one by Sedust Queen, Driven to Tears. Oh, there's another Genesis song on that album, Turn It On Again.
What's the time?
From
What's
Duke.
the time signature on that?
11:13.
So it's
Here's
cool
one that
thing
Mike
about
and I
that song is it's got that crazy time signature, but you don't really think of it.
It doesn't feel crazy.
No, it feels pretty straight.
Yeah. A song that I thought about because it was a global hit, and Mike was thinking of maybe this song too, was Guilty by Barbra Streisand and Barry Gibb wrote. Actually, one of my very favorite David Bowie songs, Ashes to Ashes. Not my favorite album. It was on Scary Monsters, but love that song so much. Any Way You Want It by Journey. One of those songs that I really like, but there's nothing to that song. The lyrics are exactly the same all the way through, and it's so simple.
First Journey song I ever heard on the radio, Any Way You Want It. We'll be talking way more about Journey in 1981.
For sure. Okay, this is a song that I consider too for the playlist, but Dire Straits' Skate Away.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. On their Making Movies album, which is actually the first Dire Straits album that I really got into before Brothers in Arms came out. And I really
Can I add Romeo
song.
and Juliet to my songs?
Also a really good one. Yep, from that same album. The Cure, A Forest. Really, really like the song by The Cure. Probably a song that people know, but they just don't know by the name because a lot of their songs have like unusual names that don't really relate to the song. George Benson, Give Me the Night.
Oh, good one. Yeah, that was on my list too. I didn't mention it, but good one. Good one.
Visage, Fade to Gray.
Another good one. Yes.
Probably the best example of the new romantic movement that Duran Duran would be the most famous band from this movement. Really good album, actually. That whole album is really good.
They were kind of the pioneers of that new romantic style, I think.
Yes. A hit in the 80s. I love when this happens. Bands that were popular in the 70s that have a hit in the 80s that is of the sound of the era. Alice Cooper, Clones. We Are All Clones.
That's a cool song.
Love this song so much. You would not know it was Alice Cooper if you heard this song. You would think it was just some new wave band from 1980, but it is an Alice Cooper song, and he did have somewhat of a hit, I think, with this song. Late in the Evening, which you already mentioned, Matt. The Rolling Stones had a song from this year that I actually really like.
Me too.
Emotional Rescue.
Incredible vocal from Mick Jagger on that with the falsetto almost straight through.
And such a cool groove, too.
Yes.
Such a cool groove.
Yep.
One more song for me, Girl You Want by Devo from Freedom of Choice.
Yes, not a good one. Yeah. Mike, your stray tracks.
There's a number that you guys have mentioned, but did you do Funky Town?
Yes.
That was our first 1980 episode.
That's what I thought. It is so infectious, and it encapsulates this new sound that was going to happen in the 80s. Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division, of course. Just Like Starting Over by John Lennon. Could You Be Loved by Bob Marley. I Will Follow You Too. You Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC.
That's on our playlist.
Don't you ever listen to our podcast, Mike?
That doesn't count.
No, I'm just telling you.
We've already done those.
Okay,
go
ahead. You can't
go
pick songs we've already put on the playlist. That's the one rule here.
I started this by saying you've touched on some of these already.
Okay, touched for maybe an hour or two. Yeah, all right.
Ace of Spades by Motorhead. Did anyone mention that?
We should have.
No.
We should have during our metal episode.
I think we talked about it in the metal episode.
The thing I remember about that song, the first time I heard that song, was Steve Slayton, the DJ on KSW.
Oh, Steve Slayton.
One night, he said, okay, guys, I've got the song that out AC/DC. And he played Ace of Spades by Motorhead. And I was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
To me, probably the last really great Stevie Wonder song, Master Blaster, came out in 80. You touched on Emotional Rescue, which is a great song, Spirit of Radio. Dirty Mind by Prince. The album itself, I don't put the album up there, but that song is one of the great songs. That's Entertainment by The Jam. A Forest by The Cure. It is a great
One of my favorite
song.
Cure songs.
Yeah, Enola Gay by OMD is still an amazing song. And seeing them perform it on Music War.
Yes, which was actually recorded in 1980, came out in 1982, but that is one of the most iconic and incredible music performance videos ever.
Generals and Majors by XTC, which I still love. Mirror in the Bathroom, which you've talked about. Let My Love Open the Door.
My album of the year was
Yes.
Pete Townsend, Empty Glass.
But we didn't pick the song. We didn't pick the song.
Yeah.
You're right. We did not pick the song.
I picked Rough Boys on the alternate playlist. I didn't pick Let My Love Open the Door.
Yeah. There you go.
Good stuff.
Actually, there's one more thing I want to mention about 1980. There were a lot of really cool music films that came out in 1980. Either movies, which we've talked about a few, Xanadu, Urban Cowboy, No Nukes concert film, Concert for Kampuchea, which had Paul McCartney, The Who, The Clash, which these all came out as albums too, but they were concert videos. Paul McCartney Rock Show, which chronicled his 1976 tour with Wings across America.
Wasn't a lot of that filmed at the Kingdome?
A lot of it was filmed at the Kingdome. Yeah. Yep. Bette Midler, Divine Madness, which kind of, was like a milestone in her career, I would say. Urga Music War, like Mike mentioned before, really incredible collection of new wave, punk, and just alternative bands from 1980. Coal Miner's Daughter, that came out in 80. The biography, basically, of Loretta Lynn. Fame, the movie version of Fame.
Good song, too.
Honeysuckle Rose, which we talked about, starring Willie Nelson and Urban Cowboy. Flash Gordon, which had a soundtrack done all by Queen. One Trick Pony, which was actually a movie where Late in the Evening, the Paul Simon song, came from. It was on the One Trick Pony soundtrack. And Rude Boy, which had performances and a soundtrack by The Clash. Those all came out in 1980. Those are really iconic music movies.
Empire Strikes Back, biggest movie in 1980. The movie I wanted to see so bad but couldn't. I was too young. Blues Brothers. Parents wouldn't let me see that.
I think I did go see that in the theater.
You were in high school by then. You were allowed to see it.
All right. That's quite a cornucopia of music from 1980. Not everything could make the list, of course. 16 songs did. And we wrapped it up by plugging in Frank Sinatra's theme from New York, New York. Cover the song from the movie of the same title, which is a big flop, by the way. Cheryl's final choice, Pulling Mussels from the Shell by Squeeze. I swear to God, I didn't know what that phrase meant. I wasn't leading you down the garden path there, trying to embarrass you. And then Mike with his outstanding choice of the Talking Heads' Once in a Lifetime, and Mike's album choice of the year, the Pretenders' debut album, going alongside Cheryl's album of the year, Pete Townsend's Empty Glass, and mine, XTC's Black Sea. Already mentioned this. We're jumping into 1981 next. I've got no clue what my favorite album of the year is, which excites me to no end because I've got a whole stack of albums from 1981 that I've never listened to, and one of those could be the one. That excites me.
Yes. I'm excited too. I already know that there's albums that I love from that year, but I'm also excited to find out what I'm going to unearth that I don't even know about yet.
Do you have an odds-on favorite at this point for favorite album in 1981 or no?
Definitely Moving Pictures could be in there. That's the one that's coming to mind right now. I know I have a couple others that would be in the running. Yeah.
So when we next converge, we will begin our tour of the year 1981. We will be selecting 18 songs from that year, 2 global hits, 2 other U.S. number ones, and then we'll pad it out with Cheryl's and my favorite songs from the year 1981, as long as they fit the vibe of a group gathering playlist. You get the rules here. So Matt Sheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. Sheryl, how can they get the playlist?
It's on Spotify. Just search for, the easiest way to do is just search for Gen Excellent.
Gen.
All one word.
Excellent.
Gen Excellent. Or you can type in Matt and Sheryl's Gen Excellent playlist and it will come up.
And if you want to share the podcast with your friends, you just tell them the same thing. Plug that into your Google machine. Gen Excellent, all one word. Should be the first thing that pops up on your list. Click on it, and you're off and running. We appreciate having you on board. And that's it for Matt and Sheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
And I'm Mike.
And thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Take care.